Hey, everybody, welcome back to Unpolished but Called, and I'm Katherine Schaefer. So, can Christians be ambitious without losing the plot? Because depending on who you ask, ambition is either a gift from God or the first step toward becoming a supervillain. Sometimes Christians get nervous around words like ambition, success, influence, growth, goals, leadership, vision. But is ambition actually the problem? So we previously talked about God giving people gifts on purpose. Like writers write, teachers teach, musicians create, leaders lead, builders build. And God didn't actually give us gifts and then expect us never to use them. Because bearing a gift isn't humility, it's a waste. And ambition and ego are not the same thing. And we previously talked about that, right? Because people often confuse ambition with, I want to steward what God gave me, and ego, I want everybody to notice me. And there's a huge difference. And I think we touched on that briefly, but today we're going to get a little bit more deeper into it, where ambition wants to build something and ego wants to be seen building it. And where is the difference? So ambition, I think, is commendable. I think ambition is beautiful. I always consider myself a very ambitious person. Ego does sometimes get in the way, and I did touch on that. If you missed the episode this week, I believe it was Monday. But I think ambition is beautiful. I think everybody should be ambitious with their gift. If you are ambitious in teaching, or you have a passion, we call it passion sometimes, but it's ambition. If you have a passion for teaching or writing, or you love doing things with your hands like building or creating, or my daughter loves painting. She's a very creative soul. She loves anything painting and drawing. She's very creative that way. She has a gift. Um, you know, she is very ambitious with that. She has artwork all over my house. And in fact, she has so much of it that she has started to hide it in my house because it's overflown in her room. So, you know, but let's be honest about why this is hard. Just let's get into it a little deeper. We, I, I have a podcast, books, newsletter, the website, but is it wrong to want to grow these things? Is it wrong to want more people to hear it or to hope that the books help people? Or is it wrong to want the podcast to reach thousands of people? I don't think so. But why? And the same thing goes for any creative. If you love teaching somebody, is it wrong to want to do those things, or, you know, build and maybe sell your what you've built, or make a career of it and be financially stable in that? Is it wrong to take your ambition, your passion, and make it your lifelong dream to do that full time? And where does ego and ambition, where's the line, right? Because I think a lot of times we confuse the two, and there is a slippery slope, and we have to be careful not to cross over the line, because we don't want it to go into, like we talked about before, where we want to, let me get my thoughts straight. We don't want to go into what God gave us to glorify him. If we're doing our gift, where we're taking what God gave us, the gift he gave us, whether it's the writing, the teaching, the speaking, the stewarding of our gifts, we want to still be grounded in what God gift gave us. God gift gave us? The gift God gave us. We want to stay grounded in that, but we don't want to cross into the place where ego takes over. Like you see some people where you lose the plot, and and I didn't want to, like, I don't want to bring up like some mega churches where it then becomes about them, where they focus more on self, about them, the financial, the money, the toys they get to buy, the big mansions, and they forget why they're doing it, right? They forget the why, the passion behind the work. They forget to steward the gift, and they forget to glorify God in the process, because it then turns into self rather than God. Their heart posture turns to self rather than God. And um and I think, when people talk about where there, I think a lot of times when people look at you and get nervous around words like that, or even Christians, when we get nervous around those words of, success and influence and goals and leadership, I think we get nervous. I know I did when I remember talking to my coach when I first got a coach, and I think one of the first conversations we had was me telling him my fear of success. Not that I'm huge now, but my fear was success. And I never wanted to lose that plot of, I never wanted ego to consume me. I never wanted to lose God in the story. I always wanted to make sure that I stayed grounded and keep my feet where it was. And my coach was very good, and he was so kind, and he he has such confidence in me. And he said, for one, um knowing you, he said, I don't think that would ever happen, because you would catch it before it got too far. And he wasn't wrong. I did slip up a little bit. I started to slip into applause, but I caught myself. I recognized it before it got, I only slipped for a little bit, for, a week or so, a couple weeks, where I started to obsess over the views and the engagements rather than God. And I pulled back right away, and reassessed, and really got into prayer. But he said, if you do slip, you'll recognize it, because the person you are. And he said, and two, you surround yourself with enough people that would pull you back. And I thought that was so kind of him because I think that is the message, is that where the fellowship comes in, because we're not alone. And if we surround ourselves with people uh, that care about us, and as much as we won't want to hear it because the truth sucks and it hurts, um, we need those people. We need those people. We need those people that will say, hey, I think you're getting a little bit too much about yourself. Or, and it might sting and we might, stop talking to them for a little while, but it will resonate because we're Christians, and because success is a terrible identity. Um, because if growth becomes identity, then ranking controls the mood, downloads control peace, sales control joy, and the numbers control worth. And that is the biggest lesson. And that's what I've learned that's what I've learned in the last few months. And I don't ever want that ever again. And even though it was for a very short time, it killed my joy. It killed so much of the point of this journey for me that um, I had to really reassess. So um, that's kind of the takeaway of all this. Success makes a wonderful servant and a terrible savior. Jesus is our savior, and this is his platform. It's not mine. And when we forget that, when we forget why we're doing it and whose it belongs to, that's when things become a mess. So we always have to remember, whose it belongs to, because this isn't mine. I'm just a steward, and I have to steward it well. The gifts aren't mine. They were given to me. I'm just stewarding them for God. Um, you know, I was blessed with gifts, and that's it. Um, you know, and that's something we have to remember, is that we were blessed with gifts. We were blessed with maybe being writers and teachers and podcasters and great speakers, and maybe having a gift of helping and healers. And we can never take advantage of those gifts, and we can never forget where those gifts came from. And as long as we keep that kind of at the forefront of who gave those gifts to us and whose it belongs to, I think we'll be in good shape. Um, and that way, that joy can never be taken from us. I'm not saying that we won't slip up, because we're not perfect, but as long as we recognize it and we're aware that it might happen and how to pull back from it and how to reassess, realign, and get back to where we need to be. So we need to always ask ourselves, if God blessed this tomorrow, what would happen? If all of a sudden we had a huge number spike, all of a sudden something went viral, um, what does that look like? What would happen? Would it change anything? Would I change? No, I'm still me. I'm still going to be me. I'm still going to turn this on. I'm still going to record my episodes. I'm still going to be the same unpolished person sitting in front of this camera, struggling with words, tripping over my own tongue. Nothing's going to change. I'm not all of a sudden going to dress fancy. I'm not all of a sudden going to have it all figured out. Um, not. I'm still going to show up 3 days a week. I'm still going to, be on Facebook. Still going to be goofy. I'm still going to be just me. So really, nothing's going to change. If you didn't bless it tomorrow, if my prayer doesn't come through, If he doesn't bless it, if all of a sudden the numbers crash, if all of a sudden, you know, whatever happens, what would happen? Nothing. I'm still grounded. I still got Jesus. Still gonna pray and read my Bible. Still have my gifts from God. Nothing changes. I'm still gonna be faithful. Still gonna obey. Still gonna serve our Father. So really, the issue I don't think is ambition. The issue is what we're worshiping. Are we worshiping views, success, viral moments, money, engagement, downloads, the golden cow? What are we worshiping? Or are we just worshiping God? I think that's what we need to look at. At the end of the day, what are we worshiping? Because what and who sits on the throne? Because a few weeks ago, I was staring at podcast numbers, and then God reminded me why I started. And it wasn't for rankings, and it wasn't for charts or downloads. It wasn't to get, those crazy spikes, and it wasn't for me to obsess over, and it wasn't for me to see how many downloads I would get in the first 24 hours. It wasn't for any of that. But it was for helping people. It was for pointing people towards Christ. It was to talk to people like me who just needed somebody to walk with them, talk to them without using big theology words that nobody but theology professors understood, to talk to people that maybe didn't have it all figured out, didn't know where they stood, didn't know where they were going, maybe a little messy, maybe unpolished, and didn't have a home church, didn't feel like they fit in anywhere. Just people like me. And just needed to be a little obedient and figure out what that means. And that's where we are. So, if this feels like something that you can connect with, please make sure you subscribe and follow. And if you want more conversations like this, please go to my website and sign up for the newsletter, katherineschaefer.com. You also get a free devotional through that link. Otherwise, what's something God has placed on your heart that you've been afraid to pursue? And what's one gift you've been sitting on because you're afraid people will think you're full of yourself? Let me know in the comments or find me on Facebook and let me know. Hit me up in the DMs. Otherwise, maybe the goal isn't to become less ambitious. Maybe the goal is to become ambitious for the right things. Build, create, write, serve, lead, dream. Just keep Jesus at the center. Thanks, friends. Have a great weekend, and God bless.